As I stated previously, one of the advantages of using this miter vise for cutting tubing is that you can cut and sand and polish the ends totally parallel on the tube. And one way to test that they are indeed properly cut is to stand them up on a block. If they stand up straight without falling over both ends, then they're going to be parallel. This is the bead I'm going to line. I've already cut 2 tubes of the right diameter. I'm going to use the longer one and hope it's not too long. I've got my 2 washers, which are jump rings that are soldered closed and then polished, and they should be a tight fit for the tubing. These are quite good because they're not going to fall off, and that makes the job easier. Okay, so the amount that I leave at each end is just a matter of experience with tubing, longer tubing, because it will collapse a little bit inside the bead, shorten up a little bit. I leave more than I normally would on a rivet when I flare it over. The next thing is I want to flare the end a little bit before I begin. I have already annealed these. Even though this is a thin wall fine silver tubing, it still could be better annealed after cutting. I'm going to use this long tapered, narrow taper punch. It isn't really so much for punching it in, it's more for placing it in and rolling it around and that would flare the end a little bit to get it started. And now I expect that jump ring's not going to go on there, correct? So I'll put it on the other end. Tight fit that one. And now it really is not going to come off that end. I have to move it down a little bit. Okay, so now the flare has kept it from coming off. And insert the bead. I'll distribute the extra tubing equally on either side, but it changes as they go. So you work a little on one end, then the other end, and back and forth to keep it evenly distributed. Don't want to end up with too much on one side and not enough on the other when you work. I'm going to work on a steel block. I've put a piece of tape just to keep it from slipping a bit when I start. Now the trick here is when I'm demonstrating is I have my fingers wrapped around the bead and then also holding the punch. And I'm not quite too sure what you're going to be able to see. Well, maybe it'll work. I can't really move very much and not drop it. So this set of punches, which I love from Tim Lejeune, 2 different tapers and plus this pointed one for flaring, plus an almost flat one for finishing. Yes, you can make them, people do, but the quality of this punch is so high, I don't think I could ever match it doing it by myself, but some like to. So first one, just a little bit, holding the bead upright, finger and thumb on the plate, 2 fingers holding the punch, trying to keep it upright, and I tap it. Of course, this is where my fingers get a cramp. Then I tap it lightly. I'm not trying to do it all at once. Tap it lightly. Now that's squared that end, and things are pretty darn tight. And I'm going to turn it over and do this end a little more. This is the first end that I had flared originally. Going pretty good. Back to the other end, flaring it equally. Now that's a pretty good start on both ends. As it gets closer to being finished, it gets even tighter in there. So I'm just adjusting that I have pretty good equal amounts on both sides. Things are going fairly well. I can see this one is bent over a little bit, and I'm going to tap it lightly to have it go back. But now I'm ready to switch to the next taper for that. And I said I was going to tap it over, paying attention to where I am. Now, once it gets that much taper, when I'm tapping on this end, it's also pushing the other end. And because it's hard to hold these things all exactly vertically, I check that I'm not getting it off center, and this one was, so I tip it a little bit. Okay, now looks pretty good. I'm going to move, I could move to this next one, but because it's a bead and it's easier to hold and work on it, I'm going to use this little hammer. Lightweight. Now, I frequently get asked, well, won't you break the bead when you hammer on it? I'm not hammering on the bead. I'm hammering or tapping lightly, very lightly, on the tubing, which is sitting on the washer and not hitting the glass at all. Lampwork glass beads can be fragile, and especially if they're not properly annealed, they can have fractures within. But mine are annealed and they're not that fragile. So lightly tapping to move that out. Not too much because I want to make it equal. That looks like I had just the right amount. Now I'm going around and hitting the outside edge a little bit. Bring it down. Fine silver is so soft, and this 30 gauge tubing is really fast. 28, it would also be good. I've done it with 26 and 24, but the less I have to tap on it, the better. And well, that's pretty good. That one was finished, and I think that's all of it.